Hey everybody, this week we're going outside the studio to visit with Piper Moyer-Shad in the Sanchez Fender Center for Innovation, and she's going to be walking us through the Anatomy Lab.
Thank you, Tyler, and welcome everybody to the J.C. Arnold Anatomy Lab. I'm here today to talk to you about our Anatomy table. What I love about the table is that we in anatomy teach students who just have to have a science class, and then we teach students who are thinking they might go into medicine, and universally they all love the table. They like the fact that you can dissect the person in several different directions. So for example, I can come in and I can do a simple transverse dissection, or, there we go, sorry, let me show you. And then I can flip that body up so you can see it, and then I can undo that dissection and bring him back to the way he was. So we do have kind of this universal, the students have this kind of universal attraction to this because you can't really mess it up, but you can dig down into different layers. So if you look at this menu is kind of all the different body systems. So I can add in body systems, I can take away body systems, and then in addition, I can alter the body systems. So right now I've hypercolored the circulatory system, I've made the skeleton transparent. But the beauty of this is you can dissect this and then put it back together. So I can take that whole cadaver that I had on earlier and pull out different body parts or individual bones if I want to. But with this, and this is pretty fantastic, you can cut this in different angles, which you can then turn it. And then, sorry, this is so cool. Try that again, there we go. And then I can go deeper into that structure. The other thing I love about this is it allows for some upper level thinking skills as well. So I often ask my students which chamber they feel is the chamber that pumps blood to the lungs and back, and which chamber they think is going all the way out to the fingers and toes and the head and back. And a lot of times they'll get this answer wrong. But that's okay, because when we talk about why it's wrong, it makes sense to them. So they always think that this chamber is the one that goes to the body, because it's the biggest chamber, which, logically kind of makes sense, until you actually look at the width of the muscular wall of these two chambers. So this is super, super thick, and this one's really, really tiny. So this is the one that's going lungs and back, doesn't have to go very far. This one is the one that has to fight against gravity to get blood back to your heart. So you can use this table for really basic level learning, like memorization. You can there's a flashcard aspect to it. I also, when I have the full body up, if we're going over different organs in an organ system, sometimes I'll remove one and see if they can figure out which one's missing. And that's kind of basic level memorization stuff, but then, like I said, you can also do higher level thinking skills with this table, and this is just an example of that. There are also about 1,200 scans of diseased and healthy tissue on there. So this particular one is not fully segmented. I can't tease out, for example, the skeletal system, but what I can do is manipulate it a little bit. And so I can then show the students, here is, I don't know if you can see this really clearly, but here's a huge aneurysm. So this is an example of one of those scans that isn't fully segmented. I can't peel out different layers, but I can use it to teach. So when we go to the circulatory system and we talk about pathologies, this is an example of a scan that I can show the students. And in fact, I've had them do projects related to these scans that I mentioned. So on one of our projects, it was a 3-part project, and they had to identify a problem that had a physical manifestation. So they had to find a scan that had a physical manifestation. And they then had to research. Part 1 was them researching as a doctor, like, why is this a problem? How do you fix this? What are the symptoms? What are some complications? And then part 2, they had to actually biomedically engineer a fix. So, for example, one of the student groups picked a gunshot wound to the head, and so they had to create a skull plate, and it needed to be to scale, and you can actually upload that information, the CAD scans, into the system, so they can see if it's to scale. And then the third part of that project was where they had to create essentially a marketing campaign, and they needed to determine, do I market that to the doctors or to the patients? We talked about R&D, research and development, so that's a pretty exciting project, I think. And that's just one example of how you can use it for different age groups. So there are also a bunch of functional scans on the table. So for example, this shows you a normal EKG with the heart beating. So we go through with our students and we analyze EKGs and what these different waves mean. But the other interesting thing is that you can look at abnormalities. So this is AFib, when your atria are fibrillating, when they're spasming basically. And then you can see what that looks like on an EKG. So a lot of students watch medical dramas, they've heard about EKGs, but they don't really understand what it is that they're looking at. They think this is sort of a measure of your heartbeat. It's really an electrical measurement. So it's kind of fun to be able to show them the difference between different abnormalities, and the normal rhythm of a heart. So I think that's kind of fascinating. And then you can see it in the strip, and you can see it in the actual beating of the heart as well. Yes, we've also had student groups like chorus come in and look at the vocal cords so they could see, what it is, what's happening in their body when they sing. We've had dance classes come in and look at different tendons and ligaments to see what they're stretching when they actually stretch and why. I've had Latin classes come in because a lot of these words, when you actually, so you can annotate all of this. So let's say I want to annotate the skeletal system. I'm sorry, I'm going to do this sideways. But when you annotate it, a lot of terms are Latin based. So we had a Latin class come in and take a look at different terms for anatomy. And then I've also had some history classes come in because there are some scanned mummies in here. So they've come in and taken a look at those. So a lot of different range of groups that have come in and seen it.
Thanks, Piper. I always find these really educational and informative. And thanks to everybody out there for all that you do.